Okay, so I just want to jump right into the workshop. Again, that's part of our function here, help you through the whole data science process, but also the interview to hopefully ace your data science interview, get the job you want, whether you're first breaking into data science or you're trying to move into another position. I'm really hoping this will be helpful for you. There's a lot of attendees here, so I'm really, really grateful to all of you for attending, giving your time. I just want to make sure we have a fun, engaging, and most of all, a helpful workshop for you that ultimately helps you. And I like to keep things interactive. So I'm going to try and monitor the chat. I'll get used to the multitasking right now. But feel free to write questions in the chat, raise your hand. Murat, if you see there's a question that hasn't been picked up, feel free to unmute and let me know as well. But yeah, I do want to keep it. Awesome. I do want to keep it interactive. So I think with that, let's jump into it. We have about 45 minutes to hopefully cover everything I'm looking to cover. So again, welcome. And right off the bat, I want to let you know what I'm hoping and what you can expect to gain from this workshop. So number one would be to at least completely understand the broad range of what to expect from your data science interviews, right? You know what's out there. There are no more unknown unknowns. It's just about tackling the things that you know you have to prepare for, which leads to number two. It's a preparation game, knowing how to plan for interviews. And hopefully I'm able to give you some of the many resources I've used that I've found very helpful in my interviewing and my preparation. And then lastly, I'm hoping all of that you'll come out of this feeling confident that, okay, I can land my data science job. I can do well in my interviews. It's just about planning, preparing, and then performing. So like Murat had mentioned, a bit of a background, who am I? I'm currently a data scientist at C3AI. If you don't know C3AI, they make AI and ML applications for enterprise companies. For example, predictive maintenance, or in my case, I work on our CRM application, which if you know CRM, like a Salesforce, you take that data, but you add intelligence to it. That's what our app does, predicting bookings, predicting when a lead might win, when will it win, and so on. So that's a bit on me. Before that, I did my master's in business analytics from MIT. That's really where I got my data science education from. There's me graduating. Before that, I didn't have a rigorous data science background strictly. I came from engineering. I did space engineering in Toronto. I wanted to be an astronaut. As you can see, those plans have changed. But also a fun thing about me is I recently got proposed. So I'm really excited about that. That's me with my beautiful fiance. This is just less than 2 weeks ago. So
congratulations.
Thank you.
So I hope that doesn't, make us lose you from here. Will we stay here still?
No, I'm staying here. I'm actually bringing her here.
Okay. Fantastic. Great.
Yeah. So that was just, to get to know me a bit personally. And I think the biggest thing to stress is I was probably in your position not too long ago. If you want the proof, let me just quickly check. Oh, thank you for the congratulations. If you want to quickly check the proof, here is a group chat from March 10th, 2022, where me and the people in my MIT program, everyone was in the same boat of like, oh my God, data science interview preparation. We need to practice so much. So I decided to make the group chat where I was basically leading the preparation, giving Python, SQL, machine learning, probability, statistics questions. We would work through it together, about a dozen of us, and we did this for a few months. And for me, I think this is important because I personally learned really well. For example, when I was in my first year and I was trying to learn Calc 1 and Calc 2 in engineering, it was actually the second year student who was a tutor who got an A in the course in his first year, who could explain the concepts best to me. I felt like I really learned from him because he was just there and it was still so fresh to him. You could relate to my experience. While oftentimes I feel like experts, while they have a wide breadth of information, it's been a while since they didn't know the basics. So I'm hoping I can be that second year student for you guys and really help make things easy to understand. So with that, I also like to give, does the group still exist? It does not. But I think what I'm going to cover here basically covers everything that was in that group. So you won't even need it. Now, what I want to cover, I like to go straight to the conclusion, sometimes first, and then work backwards. If you're not familiar with the data science interview, and actually I want to get a bit of a temperature check. If you feel very confident or relatively confident about the data science interview process, give a thumbs up. If you're feeling shaky or less, give any other reaction. I just want to get a temperature check and see how many people are coming in with familiarity, how many might not know, and so on. Perfect. So I'm going to assume raised hands is the not thumbs up. So a little bit shaky. Yep. Smiling emoji. Cat. Oh, man. That's great. Don't worry. You'll feel way better after this. Okay, awesome. So I think a lot of you come from the same position I came in a year ago, which is I was just trying to break in and I was not sure what was out there. So let me break this down for you. We'll start from the top and work our way down. This is what a hypothetical path to a data science job and interview would look like. And then again, I'll break down and work backwards. But it's going to start with making a compelling resume that's concise and impactful and that fits the job. You really want it to scream like this is a data science interview or a data science resume that's perfect for the position. Next is, and yes, it will be recorded on the YouTube channel. Next is the job hunt, where you're going to send lots of applications and leverage your referrals to try and start the interview process. I'd say, at least in my experience, submitting hundreds is about average. Then the actual interview part comes in, where if you're moved on from the application, you'll likely have something like an online assessment, which is basically they give you a link, maybe on HackerRank, and in 60 minutes to 90 minutes, you have a timed and graded assessment where they're going to ask you questions on SQL, on Python, on machine learning, and maybe a bit more. So there's that. At some point afterwards, or even before, you're going to speak to your recruiter, have a phone call where they're just trying to see, can you communicate your experiences well? Do you have interest in the position? And so on. Excuse me. Next will be the first time you'll have someone from the company on the other side, right? A technical phone screen or a video call like this, one-on-one usually. It'll be about 60 minutes. You might cover broadly many concepts like SQL, Python, machine learning theory and application, general statistics and probability. You might discuss previous data science projects that you've worked on, your experience, when you worked on this, what was the problem? What considerations did you have? And what was the impact? Afterwards, at some point, you may or may not have, it varied in my experience. You may or may not have a take-home assignment, but if you do, it's generally, they give you a CSV with data, and you're expected to do an analysis or ML modeling scenario, which involves, you might have to do some EDA, some data cleaning, pre-processing. Visualizations are always great. Show me histograms, show me plots. If it's modeling, train a model and evaluate it to solve the problem they might be giving you. And then it's a presentation. That usually takes a good amount of hours. And then the last point is what's generally referred to as the virtual onsite. This is the probably meaty part of the interview, where it's a big one. It's 3 to 5, maybe even more interviews of 1 hour each, usually one after another, but they can help break it apart for you. So that's right. You might spend 5 hours straight interviewing in this section. It's a mental battle as well. In each one of these individual 1 hour interviews, you can be expected to do a deep dive into machine learning problem solving, deep dive into Python or ML and statistics theory. You might get a case study type of question. Of course, you should expect behavioral questions, which I'm going to cover lightly, but not too much because there are many resources on behavioral out there. But that's a huge part of the virtual onsite. And then finally, after all of this, you can breathe, because congratulations, you've gotten the offer. Definitely show appreciation on it. And actually one of my favorite parts is the negotiation. I know a lot of people maybe don't like the negotiation, but I love to negotiate. I could do a whole workshop on that. I'm totally pro negotiation, and we can have some tips on that, but I just want to be concise and show you that this is what we're going to cover. And let me just quickly take a look at the chat. So if you're a software engineer, I would definitely say don't remove the experience, especially as a software engineer. If you're going into the engineering heavy type of data science, like ML engineer, that's valuable skill. What I would try and do is definitely keep the experience, but frame it in a more data science way, right? It depends on the application, but if you can say, software engineering, for example, at my company, they're software engineers, but they work on our machine learning platform. So boom, that's right there, a way to make it contextual, and so on and so forth. I see for systems engineers, well, it's hard to give a catch-all answer, but just keep your experience true. But if you can make it data science flavored, I would recommend, if you can. If not, no worries. The experience is still great. But I do want to jump into, again, showing you the end first and then starting from the beginning and breaking it down. What do these interviews really look like? And I will share the presentation. It will also be recorded on YouTube. You might be asked, explain cross-validation and the motivation behind it. How does cross-validation change when dealing with time series data? We're not going to answer them now. That's part of the mock interview section I have at the end of our workshop. But I do have answers for this that we'll cover after. But ask yourself, how do you feel about being able to confidently answer these? Statistics, what is the central limit theorem? And how would you explain it to a non-technical person? Again, we will cover these, so don't worry. I'm just flashing them now to give you an idea of what we're talking about. In Python, they might say, hey, you're given a data frame, df, and a row of values, x. Write a function to find the nearest neighbors of x. Nearest neighbor is a common data science machine learning algorithm. How do you feel about being able to code it from scratch? And maybe there's some caveats. Maybe there is some caveats in that approach. And second last, of course, SQL. They might explain to you tables. Hey, you have these tables with this column names. In this scenario, write me a query that does X, Y, Z. And you will be expected to actually, in these coding questions, usually it's either the online assessment, or you might actually be in a Zoom call like this, sharing screen while you code, which adds a whole other element of stress and communication. Awesome. And lastly, I would say general problem solving. Let's say you're given, this is an e-commerce company, and they're going to tell you, hey, you work at our e-commerce firm, and we decided we want to reduce fraudulent transactions at our point of sale. How would you approach this problem? Very general, very vague, and it will be up to you to break down the whole process of defining the problem, data collection, pre-processing, your model selection, model evaluation, and then even maybe how you would consider deploying it. And again, we'll come back to these in more detail. I'm going to quickly take a look at the chat. I'm going to try and pick questions here and there, just because I know there's a lot coming in. I do want to be fair to the presentation as well. But entry level versus experienced, I think for experienced, they're just going to expect a greater level of expertise. They're going to ask about your experience also having leading projects, right? Leading data science endeavors, the considerations you make there. So that's a quick answer for what they might expect. Now, we're still diving in. When I was doing my interview research, if that sounds like a lot, to me, it felt like a lot. It felt pretty daunting. You're definitely not alone. I really like this post from a forum where this person who worked at Facebook, they say 3 years ago, so that would be 2018. They're like, hey, have DS interviews gotten harder in the past few years? They were feeling overwhelmed, lots of Python, lots of SQL. What's going on? So you're not alone. Others agree. I would agree. I really like this response in that same forum post. This is a top response. And it gives a really good outline of basically what I'm going to present to you as well. The whole interview process. It can take months of preparation. And I think the thing to keep in mind is it doesn't mean that you're not skilled, but you need to have a very high level of preparation, I find, in these interviews. And what does that involve? Right? You have to get better at SQL rounds. This person took the months of practice. For me, I came in with no SQL experience, so I had the same experience, about 3 months of practice. Then there's the Python algorithms, right? Can you write scripting functions? You need to review material for most statistics and probability at, I'd say, a first-year university level, know the core concepts. And then there's usually some end-to-end take-home assignment and or the live coding round where you dig deeper into SQL or Python while somebody is watching you, which always adds a layer. Then, of course, it's very important still, the softer skills, behavioral questions, product sense questions, cultural fit. This is where, again, you'll talk about your background and all of that. And then the cherry on top is data science is a very broad term, which can mean many different things to different companies. It's a very broad umbrella term. So every company will choose to interview a bit differently, cover different concepts, cover some concepts less. But at the very least, I'm hoping to prepare you broad base for almost everything. And then you can kind of fine tune to each specific interview. That's kind of my goal. I'm giving you a pre-trained model and then you'll fine tune. That's my analogy for you. And again, I just want to stress, a 60-minute workshop won't be enough to master the interview, right? But I want to be able to show you the path so you can know how you would master it. I'll give you the tools. I'll highlight the path, answer your questions, and then you will get to mastering it when you put in the work. And just a quick now overview, I'm going to dig into details of that basically 8-step data science interview process. I'm going to spend more time on the technical parts, but I will go over generally resume tips, job hunting and application tips, and then a deep dive into the technical interview components, right? What to expect, how to prepare. I have a ton of resources I found helpful. I'm sure there are others, but I can at least share what helped me. This will go across the technical components that I've already discussed. I want to give you general tips for interviewing. And then actually, I'm going to insert a 4.5. I see there's a lot of questions in the chat. I think I'm going to try and hold on to the questions until we get to the end of 4, and then have a big Q&A, and then also fit in the mock interview workshop part, if time permits, where I have 21 questions, question and answer that we can try and work through, and you can get a sense of what the interview is like. But with that being said, let's jump into the first part, resume tips. For me, I found everyone kind of gave different advice on resumes. It's normal. Keep in mind, it's a marketing document. So keep things simple and professional. I always default to, hey, Harvard and MIT and Stanford, they all offer free accessible templates. I mean, if it works for them, it probably works for everyone. So I would just suggest you keep, you leverage what resources are out there by these great institutions. Most people will say keep it 1 page, right? Where you explain your education, your experience, your skills, and some additional information. 2 pages or more are usually reserved for people with many years of experience. Another one is, does the resume, I like to say, my quote, does the resume scream, I am a data scientist? And I know for many people, I came in with no data science experience. I came in with very little, basically a couple of personal projects, but and if you don't have internships and you don't have more personal projects, start working on them, because these are the things you want to highlight on the resume. The recruiter they're basically trying to minimize false positives. They want to make sure anyone they move on is a very strong fit. And especially at these top companies, they receive hundreds and thousands of resumes a day even. So they're looking for near perfect matches in most cases. And another thing to keep in mind is to highlight your impact. This is resume formatting, very key, right? I personally like this ingredient template of I did X using Y to achieve Z, or some permutation of this. Using Y, I achieved Z doing X, or I achieved Y doing X using this. Like, it's basically what you did, the tools you used, and the impact you had. And you can see how you can transform a not so compelling bullet point, like, oh, I built a demand forecasting model. Great. But what about, I developed a demand forecasting model to improve forecast accuracy by 20%, measurable impact, and save $3 million in projected costs. Again, measurable impact. Personally, I like to do this format where I put the tools in brackets. That's preferential. You can totally just put it in the sentence. And I always get the question of, oh, what if I don't know the impact? Then I would urge you to try and think about what impact this either does have from a pure, accuracy point of view, or what it might have if you've worked in a company. Even if it's a pet project, like, if you really implemented your solution, what could it do? Because ultimately that's what data science is for. It's making an impact, solving problems. So really key to have that in your resumes. And next component, sorry, I'm seeing through the chat, and I really want to answer all the questions I can, but I don't want to get too derailed and then have me not have enough time to finish everything. So like I said, put them through the chat at the end. Either feel free to ask them again, or I'm going to go back and pick these. But I just wanted to let everyone be aware of that. So on the next component, let's say you have a nice resume now, beautiful, great data science resume. For the job hunt, I would stress to apply early and apply often, because it can easily take 3 or more months from the application to the offer. I had this experience. I had applied in March and April and did not get offers until June and July. So I remember even when I was in undergrad thinking, oh yeah, in a month I'll have an offer. It almost always takes a lot longer, so keep that in mind. And this waterfall diagram on the right basically demonstrates the expected roughly response rate you can expect to get from your applications, right? Everyone has different tactics on this. You do the sniper approach where you focus on a key set of positions and really cater your resume, or do you do the shotgun approach where you just blast it out to as many as possible and catch some fish with a wide net? But at the end of the day, the response rate just naturally will be low. You see it from this person. They had 134 applicants. Most of them get no response. A small subset, maybe eight of those got a coding challenge and then a phone screen. And then it ended up being 1 or 2 offers. So keep those statistics in mind. A way to help this is referrals. Referrals are very helpful. It's more likely for your resume to be seen, right? Referrals usually get placed into the recruiter's eyes more often. And it's totally fair game to ask others in your network, network with them, build a good relationship, but just straight up ask for referrals. Now, I understand everyone is different. For me, now that I started working, I find it funny because I'm on the other end of receiving the referral requests. And for me, I just like it when it's straightforward. I'm not going to bite. Have an introduction, be like, hey, I'm interested in the data science position at C3. Here's my resume. Let me know if you'd be able to help with the referral. And for me, that's totally fair game. So just keep that in mind. This, I would freeze and really jot down this tool. This tool for me was a lifesaver. Completely me just saying it on my own will. Simplify.jobs, it both is a Chrome extension, but it's also a website. It's fantastic for basically automating your interview application process, because we all know that process where you drop your resume and then you have to refill the same experience, then you have to refill the education section, and then you have to select the boxes, I'm this, and it makes a seemingly quick application take 5 minutes. And then for 100 applications, that's a lot of time. This autofills everything for you once. You populate it, and for most applications, it autofills it completely, one click, and you're done. It goes from like 5 minutes to 30 seconds. And then another great thing about this tool is it actually has positions available on it. I think more than half of my interviews came from positions I found on this website. And it makes it easy. You see, oh, like let's say data scientist at C3, I found that from them. Quick, I apply, autofills for me, and I go. Huge productivity boost for that. I actually like the tool so much. I rarely do this, but I found the founder on LinkedIn who was he's a Stanford computer science student. I'm like, this tool is amazing, by the way. Just cold reached out to him. Like, keep up the good work. It was so good. But yeah, then on that note, of course, LinkedIn connections. Leverage your network. As Murat was saying, it's very, very valuable. Okay, we've got into the preface. Let me just check my time here. We've got into the preface of our interview. Now I want to go into the meat and potatoes. And I'm seeing I might not have too much time. Murat, are we ending right at 12:45 or will we have some extra time? I'm going to assume, just for safety, we'll end at 12:45, but if we can go over, then I'm happy to go over a little bit and help out. But if that's the case, okay, I'm going to take you through the core technical pillars. This is the part that takes the most practice. And I like to break it into 3 categories. Your technical/coding, which, like I mentioned, will cover your SQL, your Python, and even some data exploration/modeling. I've seen this one be pretty popular, and I actually like it as an interviewee, where they might give you a CSV on the interview, and in 1 hour, you're expected to do an EDA, pre-processing, modeling, validation, all on the fly with someone else on the other end. It really tests like how well can you do a quick modeling run through. On the other end, there's the concepts like machine learning and stats, right? Your statistics foundations, machine learning concepts, and even some probability. I've gotten that in a few ones. Probability less so, and usually generally simple, but it's there. And then there's a very vast umbrella term of machine learning or problem solving, which can encompass a machine learning case study, like I mentioned in the beginning about preventing fraud. For more product analyst type roles, it could be an A/B testing approach. Let's say it's a social media company and they want to try a new UI or a new, very simple, a new button. They want to change the button format. How would you test if this is actually a worthwhile change to put into production and show to all of our customers? And then lastly, general, what I would call product sense questions. A lot of times in data science, you're being guided by metrics, like some North Star metrics that your business is trying to optimize, or an approach to solving a problem or diagnosing a problem. That's an investigation. Oh, metric X has dropped by this amount. What happened? We need to figure out what happened. And how do you think about that? How would you diagnose it? And let me take a quick look. Just seeing awesome. Thank you for the tool, of course. I think one thing to keep in mind, this spectrum is very important to keep in mind for data science. You can slice and dice what a data science is in many ways, but at least the simple way to think about it is on a line from very business and product focused, like a product analyst type of role, to the opposite end, which is very implementation and engineering focused, which is becoming a growing thing known as a machine learning engineer. And each role will focus on more concepts. The product analyst will focus heavily on SQL, on A/B testing, on metric analysis, and light ML modeling. It will almost certainly will not go into deep learning, will not go into very complicated like Python leak code questions. But on the flip side, the machine learning engineer will expect that you have a deeper understanding of ML theory, as well as potentially doing like case studies on the fly, walk me through an ML breakdown. Expected to have very strong coding, very strong Python, right? You could very well be deploying code into production. That's why. Strong statistics and maybe some light SQL. It really depends on the company. So because I know this whole breadth of what a data science interview can be is a lot, but this will, again, I'm giving you a broad base and then you're going to fine tune. And thankfully, most companies do the same thing. They take a subset of these concepts and package that in their interview. Last thing I want to say on this, your data science job can cover anywhere on the spectrum, somewhere in the middle, or sometimes it covers the whole thing and more. You never know. That's why you fine tune to each position. One big piece of advice is to talk to your recruiter. They want to see you succeed in the interview, right? They have an incentive to see you succeed in the interview. So ask them, what to expect in interviews. Don't feel shy. Be like, hey, what's the format going to be? Talk about it with them. And they'll actually, oftentimes it's perfectly okay. They'll give you a rough outline of what to expect. That's very helpful. And let me go to the next slide. Again, if you want to screen grab this, but the slides and everything will be available. These are helpful resources I found across these categories. And I've bolded the 4 most key ones. There's this book that's literally called Ace the Data Science Interview. It's a red book. You can buy it on paperback. It's not too expensive. And I'm just saying it because for me, it was super helpful. It's basically a resource of exactly what I'm showing you, all these concepts, ML, Python, SQL, and so on, walking you through them in more detail than you could in 60 minutes. And it has real world practice questions. So for me, this book is a great, basically, holdout test set, both for training, but also how well am I doing? Like, am I at a strong enough level for my interviews? And you start building up your knowledge base. So very useful. In general, for learning ML theory and stats, I really like the YouTube channel StatQuest. There's a video for every concept. I think he's great at explaining what is gradient boosting, what is a random forest, what are neural networks really doing. He has a video on all of this. Very popular channel, great explanations. I learned a ton from watching him. A third one is focused on the Python components. Again, if your data science role is going to involve a good amount of coding, those great songs as well. Yes, very great songs. If you're going to be doing more Python stuff in your data science application, there's LeetCode. I think everyone knows leetcode.com, where you practice all these coding challenges. But there's this source, it's a website and a YouTube channel called neetcode.io. This is phenomenal. He's an engineer now working at Google who's basically compressed all the LeetCode questions into like 75 archetypical questions across categories. And I think it addresses a big problem when I was practicing LeetCode is you just go from question to question and you never really connect dots in a linear way. Like, let's say you're trying to gain your intuition on dictionaries and sets, but then you jump to another concept. Instead, what NeetCode does is it tells you, hey, we're going to work on dictionaries and sets, and here are like 5 questions to solve in order. Okay, now we're going to work on 2-pointer problems. Now we're going to work on this and this. Very helpful. And each of the questions, he has a YouTube video where he has an amazing like 10-15 minute explanation of his solution. So you can fully understand the intuition behind all of these LeetCode style questions. So neetcode.io, amazing resource. And then lastly, for SQL, there's a million resources to learn SQL. Pick your favorite, but I really liked Interview Query. They just have general practice. So all of these other resources I think are great as well, but I just wanted to highlight this and hopefully share something that might help all of you. So with that, I think I'm going to assume we have 10 minutes. Murat, if you can put in the chat if we're going to end exactly at 12:45, that would be great to know. Otherwise, I'll try and go through this quickly, and I want to leave some time just in case. But for SQL, I think the biggest thing to keep in mind, why are they asking this? Well, in your job, almost always, these companies store data in production tables in SQL, and you're going to have to fetch your own data and fetch your own insights. So very important. High prevalence from the online assessment all the way to the virtual round. And my approach is just to practice often. That's really all, with many of the helpful resources that I highlighted before and I'm highlighting again. For all these concepts, I'm giving you a bit of a barometer on when you can feel ready. This is personal and subjective, but just from my experience. I'd say you're getting there when you can go on LeetCode. LeetCode has SQL questions, and you can generally comfortably solve the easy questions, right? Which will involve a simple join, a group by, a where, order, so on. So you're getting there. You're probably ready once you can comfortably solve the medium difficulty questions, as on LeetCode and or the Ace the Data Science interview book questions. These will involve more complicated joins, window functions like rank, dense rank, even common table expressions, like I'm showing an example here. You basically have a table within the table or within your expression. So you're probably ready once you get there. And then I've just added definitely if you want to feel like, oh, I'm going to walk in and nail this. If you can do the LeetCode hard while comfortably do the LeetCode hard while under all of these under interview circumstances where you're communicating and it's timed, then I'd say you're for sure ready. The next part will be machine learning concepts, right? And why? I mean, people in the industry, I don't like the term, but they want to see that you can do, ML more than importing sklearn, for example. They want to see, like, do you understand the algorithms you're using and the models you're training? And do you understand typical machine learning modeling scenarios? And it's very prevalent, especially if your position involves a lot of ML. I would, if you haven't already, tackle various machine learning problems and projects. Kaggle, if you haven't heard of Kaggle, is great, like a million different data sets and people that you can work through, other people's example work throughs, great to learn. And you just want to gain the intuition on how do you really handle like machine learning in the real world? How do you handle an imbalanced data set? What's the purpose of cross-validation? How do you deal with X, time series data, regression, classification, and so on? And I think it's just good to know the key math and concepts behind common algorithms, linear regression, logistic regression, random forest, XGBoost. Again, helpful resources into all of this, but you want to really be able to explain what they're doing, especially if you write these algorithms in your resume. That's like fair game for the interviewer to dig in deep into, okay, what does it really mean when you're doing the XGBoost? Why did you pick that? What does it do? And I would say if the position you're applying to is really like, it seems like they want like more of an ML researcher or cutting edge ML, you should expect proficiency in deep learning as well. And all the aspects that come into deep learning, maybe they want more NLP, computer vision, but cater it to that. And similarly, I think if you can solve the Ace the Data Science interview, easy difficulty questions, you're getting there, you're making good progress. If you can solve the medium questions, you're probably ready. I'd say you're probably ready. And by the way, in all cases, I think probably is a good benchmark. Definitely is like if you want to overkill. But if you're able of also doing all of that and explaining these core ML algorithms with like similar quality to the StatQuest videos, then you're going to be probably fine. And there's great resources as well. There's actually a 4-page cheat sheet that someone had made on data science and machine learning. If you make your own cheat sheet like this, that'll help you learn a ton, right? And you see parts of this cheat sheet. There's more pages. But if you can understand what's really going on underneath the hood, that would be great. Next session, Python. And I know people will say, what about R? I mean, it depends on the position. I just would say rough estimate, 90% of data science positions will use Python. So just keep that in mind. They want to know, I mean, you're going to code as a data scientist. Can you effectively write scripts at the very least, like working with data frames, CSVs? And then for the more engineering heavy ones, can you actually write production level code? You really have that near software engineer or even software engineer level coding skills. And you can see these questions throughout the interview process. Coding is huge. I mean, the disparity in coding skills is very, very wide. I'd say one of the widest. So if you have low familiarity, at the very least, start becoming comfortable with common coding principles, like at least know data structures, lists in dictionaries or maps, sets, so on and so on. Know about loops, if statements, and the common data science applications that or in tools that you'll use, right? Pandas, data frames. You're going to be working with data frames all the time as a data scientist. General NumPy helpfulness, and so on. For the coding heavy roles, I would then focus on lead code style, algorithm questions, as well as like knowing about space and time complexity. If you're not familiar with these, again, the neat code resources or lead code in general will help you become familiar. Once you can do basic EDA on a data frame, which involves some looping, involves some if conditions, some masking, maybe a group by, who knows, you're getting there. You're able to code sufficiently. You're probably ready for most data science jobs if you can comfortably solve like neat code, easy level algorithm questions. And I mean, if you want to overkill, I mean, if you can solve neat code medium while under interview conditions, you're basically coding level of a mid-level software engineer, and you're a data scientist, so you're more than fine. Let me quickly take a look at the QA. ASDI. Oh, when I say ADSI, it's that book, Ace the Data Science Interview. So going back to it, for me, it's just a superb resource for practicing and evaluating. Probably has everything you need. So yeah, that's what I mean by the acronym ADSI, Ace the Data Science Interview. Let me minimize this. How are we doing on time? Okay, I'm going to quickly brush through this just in case. I just want everyone to be aware that this is here. Understand first year level stats and probability, right? They just want to understand, do you know these concepts? Quickly skip through. Problem solving, like we talked about, this is very open-ended, and it's just going to take practice of being able to walk through, again, like let's say this fraud detection problem. How do you think about it? Because you might do this in your job. Similarly, for the more product analyst focused roles, you can almost certainly bet you're going to have some A/B testing approach. How do you design a product experiment? And do you have good business and product sense? And again, the benchmarks are there. These two problem solvings, honestly, I really recommend you find a partner and you just practice together. That's really what helps. And there's good YouTube videos on this as well. For example, Emma Ding has a YouTube channel that walks through like product interview question, metrics question, super helpful. I know that was a bit of a rapid fire, but I did just want to get through everything and leave some time for more. Last thing I'm going to do before getting into the mock interviews and taking questions is give you some general tips, which is don't forget the behavioral parts, right? Tell me about challenges you've had. Tell me about times you've encountered XYZ. They're going to be asked. There's many existing resources like this, like the STAR method. And I would recommend you review all your prior experience beforehand so you can remember them if you're asked. What's been a challenging moment for you? Somewhere where, your most proud achievement. Who knows what they'll ask, but there's resources out there. Be prepared to discuss your data science projects in depth, including the motivation of your problem, the design or modeling choices you made, the approach, and the impact it had. These are hyper common. They want to see how you've applied data science already. In general, for setting expectations, this happened to me. I mean, know that your first few interviews are probably not going to go as well as you'd like. I failed them, my first few. But they 100% serve as great practice for the future, and you will get more ready. And I'd say once you start feeling like you're grasping concepts and getting there, start practicing under real interview conditions. It's completely different when you're on camera, talking out loud while you're solving, and have to do it in a timed scenario. So emulate those circumstances. That's the best practice. Track your progress, because what gets measured gets improved. Another thing to keep in mind now that I conduct interviews is super apparent. It's like, remember that your interviewer might be your future coworker. They just want to have an interesting, conversation and interview with you and confirm that, yeah, this is someone I could see myself working with on my team. We'll have a good working relationship. And on that note, I mean, keep communicating and having a conversation. Data science is a lot of the time about collaborative problem solving. They want to see, yeah, can you do this on my team? In the interviews, totally keep a pen and paper, in my opinion, to take notes. You're going to be asked all these questions and they're not going to show you slides. You want to take notes, write them down. It's also perfectly fine when asked a loaded question to be like, hey, can I repeat this? I'm going to write it down. And take the time to organize your thoughts before you reply. It's totally fair. I like to see that as an interviewer. Come prepare your thoughts and then present to me. And then negotiation, I would just say brush up on your negotiation tips. Almost every offer is negotiable, and they most likely expect you to negotiate. So just keep that in mind. Okay, we are at 12:46 on the dot. I'm hoping that this big 8-step process, you now feel more prepared. I know it, at the very least, you know what's out there. If it was unclear to you, you know. So I'm hoping this helped. I do have mock interview questions. I don't know what the time situation is, but I also see Murad, if you want to take questions or have any comments, please let me know.
Yeah, I mean, we are in an hour level. It's up to you. You may take more questions, or we could do another session on that later. I see a really good interest on people. People stay with almost maybe 100% or 95%, participants, they stay till end, which is a good one compared to most of our meetups.
No, it's good to hear.
Yeah, we could just could talk about it, and we could think about another session on that. And if people can give us feedback on what kind of things they request, we could maybe give thoughts on it.
Okay,
so what
I like that approach. Maybe what we can do, these 21 questions, they could themselves take more than an hour. So what I could do is kind of like a group mock interview workshop. And for now, take some questions from the chat.
Yep.
Perfect.
So, and then probably what's next, we prepare another one, and next one, what we should do is have this survey here on some of these questions in general. We'll see that people are understanding of this question, and we give them some feedback.
Yeah.
It's just unnamed, kind of a pop-up quiz of a few of those, and give us some understanding of which areas we can maybe emphasize on that later sessions.
Awesome.
That's good. Thank you, Semi, for the program. It was really nice, and I like that everyone is engaged. For everyone, thank you for participating all over the world. And yeah, for some of the people, we couldn't get where they joined from, probably for next session. We'll do that survey in that area too. Good. Anything else you want to add, Sami?
I was just gonna write in chat, but I know there's so many questions. I really wish I had the time and we had the time to answer them. I think what we're seeing is we're gonna do a follow-up session.
Yep.
I know there's so many. I'm really glad to see the enthusiasm. So yeah, let's do another one. But I hope you guys found at least this part very valuable.
Yeah, it was really great. Thank you. So have a good day for everyone. Good night for some part of the world. So I hope to see you next time.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate you coming out. Hope you found it helpful. Add me on LinkedIn. Totally happy to. So.
Right. Thank you.